All right, good afternoon. I'm sorry to keep you all waiting. We had a matter related to this case that I had to take care of, and that's why we're delayed in getting this started. I'm going to take a few minutes and just kind of run through the events that have led to an arrest this afternoon in the death of a 13-day-old baby. And I'm going to provide you with some details at first because I want to make sure that we're complete in the disclosures and as we tell you what happened, because it not only involves criminal investigation but also our Child Protection Investigation Division and some previous complaints that occurred, and just so that you have the complete picture of what happened here. So on Monday afternoon at about 4:30 p.m., the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office responded to 356 Bath Club Drive in North Reddington Beach regarding a deceased infant. Upon deputies' arrival, fire rescue was treating 13-day-old infant Kathleen, with a K, Steele. She was in cardiac arrest. Kathleen was transported to St. Petersburg General Hospital, where she was pronounced dead. Upon investigation, we learned that Kathleen's biological mother is 62-year-old Kathleen Marie Steele. So the elder Steele, at 62 years old, delivered baby Kathleen, who was 13 days old, on July 26th of this year. Steele's husband died of cancer. I believe he was around 63 years old in 2011. And prior to his death, he had sperm frozen so that Steele could later be artificially inseminated, which is how baby Kathleen was conceived. Steele has two other biological children, 6-year-old Frankie, who was conceived and born before Steele's husband died in 2011, and 3-year-old Philip, who was also conceived with frozen sperm and artificially inseminated in 2012. According to Steele, she paid a doctor in New York City to artificially inseminate her with her deceased husband's sperm late last year, and that resulted in baby Kathleen's birth on July 26. By numerous witness accounts, Kathleen Steele was an inattentive parent, and Frankie and Philip were largely unsupervised and had very serious behavior issues. In late July of this year, there was an accidental fire at Steele's home in North Reddington. She was forced to move out, and on July 29th of this year, she was staying at a hotel in Treasure Island. In the middle of the night while staying at the hotel, there was a fire alarm. She took, at this point, baby Kathleen was like 3 days old. She put Kathleen in a car carrier, and she was unbuckled in the car carrier and proceeded down the stairs of the hotel. She tripped and dropped baby Kathleen. Baby Kathleen tumbled out of the car carrier and struck her head. She was taken to All Children's Hospital in St. Petersburg on the 29th of July, and doctors determined that baby Kathleen suffered from a minor brain bleed and that she was admitted to the hospital. The hospital notified the Department of Children and Families Child Abuse Hotline, and the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office Child Protection Investigation Division responded to the hospital. I want to stress that as a result of that response, all protocols were followed and all investigative timeframes by the Child Protection Investigation Division were met. Through the investigation by our child protection investigators, which included medical examination results from doctors, we determined on the 30th that there was no evidence of abuse, and the incident at the hotel appeared to be accidental. Baby Kathleen was released from All Children's Hospital on July 31st, 2016, but to be thorough, we nonetheless scheduled an appointment for Kathleen to be evaluated by the child protection team, and that appointment was set for August 1st. However, the mom, Kathleen Steele, canceled the appointment with CPT, and it had been rescheduled for August 10th, which of course is 2 days after the baby died. The Pinellas County Sheriff's Office Child Protection Investigation Division received another call through the DCF hotline on August 2nd. The allegation was that all three children, Frankie, Philip, and baby Kathleen, were being inadequately supervised by the mother. The Pinellas County Sheriff's Office Child Protection investigator responded to the home for a home visit. There was an investigation, and there was no evidence of inadequate supervision at that time. All timeframes were met, all investigative protocols were followed, and there was no reason for any additional action on August 2nd. So if we fast forward to this past Monday, August 8th, we know that about 11 o'clock a.m. on Monday morning, Steele took baby Kathleen along with Frankie and Philip to a pediatrician's office in St. Petersburg. Steele claimed the baby was not eating properly and wanted the baby checked by the pediatrician. We spoke with the pediatrician, and he found nothing medically wrong with the baby. But importantly, in the physician's examination of the baby at 11 o'clock a.m. on Monday morning, he states that there was no sign of trauma to the baby. The baby's skull was intact, and there was no bruising on the baby's face. We know that after leaving the pediatrician's office, Frankie, the 6-year-old, dropped his mom's cell phone and cracked the screen. They went to a business called CPR Cell Phone Repair at 1472 66th Street North in St. Petersburg and dropped the phone off. After going to a restaurant in St. Pete, they returned to the cell phone repair shop at 1:50 p.m., where Steele left baby Kathleen, 6-year-old Frankie, and 3-year-old Philip in the vehicle alone. And this was a van-type vehicle with captain's chairs so that Frankie and Philip could get out of their seats, stand up, and move around. Baby Kathleen was in the car seat. Steele turned the car off, locked the doors, rolled the windows up, and went inside the business. Steele left the kids unattended while she was in this business for over 30 minutes, which is confirmed by video. While in the car with Frankie and Philip, baby Kathleen was acting up and crying. Frankie, the 6-year-old, removed baby Kathleen from the car seat and began flipping her multiple times back and forth, dropping her on the floor, slamming her head against the ceiling, striking her in the face, and causing severe trauma to the baby's head and face. We found blood in the car that's consistent with where Frankie slammed the baby. The baby's skull was fractured in several places, and her entire face was severely bruised. The baby was simply beaten, traumatized, gross swelling about her face. The skull was cracked in numerous places, described as probably mush. And one of the worst things that I've ever seen, especially with a 13-day-old, and her appearance was one of just a kid that had been pummeled. Frankie, the 6-year-old, then put baby Kathleen back in the car seat, and when Steele returned to the car, told his mother in relation to Kathleen's condition, it's, quote, serious. Steele disregarded Frankie's notification to his mother that the baby was in distress. She proceeded to another business before going home. When they arrived home, Steele brought the baby inside and noticed that she was in distress, asking 6-year-old Frankie if, quote, the baby was even breathing. I'm telling you, this kid's face was a mess. There's no mistaking the condition that this 13-day-old infant was in. And as I said, she had been pummeled. She was at that point blue and cold to the touch. The baby had likely been dead since they left the cell phone store at about 2:15 p.m. However, when they got home a couple hours later, instead of calling 911, Steele called a neighbor who was a nurse. The neighbor responded to the home, immediately recognized the baby was deceased, but caused to have called 911 anyway. As I mentioned, baby Kathleen was transported to St. Pete General Hospital, where she was pronounced dead. The autopsy, consistent with what we saw in the external observations, revealed severe trauma to the baby and multiple skull fractures. Frankie, the 6-year-old, admitted to detectives that he slammed baby Kathleen to the ground, struck her head on the ceiling, and struck her in the face, causing these terrible and violent injuries. On Monday night, our Child Protection Investigation Division removed Frankie and Philip from Steele's custody, and they have been placed in foster care since Monday night. Due to his age of being 6 years old, Frankie will not be criminally charged with the homicide of 13-day-old Kathleen. He'll remain in DCF custody until a dependency judge determines where he should be placed. I've talked in the last couple of days with DCF Secretary Mike Carroll and DJJ Secretary Christine Daly, and they and their staffs have participated in the decision as to Frankie's current placement and will coordinate further evaluations and the appropriate course of action as to Frankie for the future. Kathleen Steele, the mother, was arrested by Pinellas County Sheriff's Office deputies this afternoon and has been charged with aggravated manslaughter for the child abuse and leaving the children unattended in the car for over 30 minutes, allowing 6-year-old Frankie to kill his baby sister. Needless to say, there's a lot troubling about this case, not the least of which is a 6-year-old boy who violently killed his 13-day-old sister, and Kathleen Steele's abuse and neglect by leaving the kids unattended in the car for over 30 minutes. But there's another troubling aspect of this case, and that's some supposed medical professional who agreed to impregnate a 62-year-old woman with her dead husband's sperm, and she gives birth to a baby that by all accounts she's unable to adequately care for. Steele even made statements in the last couple of days that she was not finished, as apparently there's more frozen sperm and she wanted to have yet another baby boy. Something is seriously messed up with that. I can tell you that those of us that have been doing this in this business for a very long time have never seen anything like this. I can tell you that in talking to Bernie McCabe, the state attorney, talking to Secretary Carroll, Secretary Daly, and others, that nobody can ever recall a situation in our history, here in Florida at least, where we've had a 6-year-old kill a 13-day-old and a 6-year-old boy who engages in this type of just vicious brutalization of a baby and killed somebody. So, there's a tragedy here. Probably at the end of the day, Frankie's the victim. Frankie's got a lot of issues and a lot of problems. And, it's a very sad case to say the least. But the accountability belongs with Kathleen Steele, the mother, who was, by all accounts, ill-equipped to have a baby at 62 years old, to have this infant, to care for these kids. And Frankie and Philip at 6 and 3 were running amok and were unsupervised, and what others saw was consistent with what happened on Monday, in that she didn't care for the kids and was negligent and neglectful and abused them by leaving these kids in the car. So that's the situation. No, and that's why I ran through it with you. As far as any prior complaints, all of us, the entire, I'll say, criminal justice, juvenile justice, child welfare system, had no prior involvement or notification. That's why I took some time to go through the details. And prior to the 29th and that incident at the Treasure Island Hotel, is that DCF, Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, anybody, had no knowledge of anything regarding this family. I do believe that there are others that saw things, that saw indicators, probably didn't bring them forward to anybody, and if they had brought them forward, maybe something could have been done, maybe not. I don't know. You need a crystal ball to figure that out. But there are a lot of people that we have since interviewed that saw indicators that she was ill-equipped and bad parenting, and that Frankie was having issues, some aggression issues on Frankie's part. One neighbor wouldn't let her son, who's a similar age, play with Frankie. There was an adult out there that we now know that he sucker punched. I mean, there's some real issues there.
Can you get into it all? This doctor, I guess in New York, as you say, you use the words, he's a supposed medical professional. Is it typical for these doctors to sort of screen the people they're impregnating and kind of get into beyond just the request of I'd like to be artificially inseminated?
We have not, we have not conducted a lot of investigation into that. What we know about that situation is largely what's been conveyed to us from Kathleen or from close friends that have some knowledge of the situation. Kathleen does have some relatives that live up in Illinois. We've had some limited communication with them, and it caused some dissension within her family that she was doing this because they recognized that this is not something that she should be doing. It was wrong. I don't know the identity of the doctor in New York who did this. If I did, I'd tell you, because whoever it is needs some serious scrutiny for doing it, I believe. And I don't have any more specifics on it. Otherwise, I'd share them with you. But as they say, and there's some indication that she paid, and I don't know how much, other than it was a very, very substantial amount of money. And there are some people out there that will do anything for money. But, in my view, my opinion, for whatever it's worth, is that you're not a medical professional if you're going to impregnate a 62-year-old woman. I mean, this doesn't make any sense. And you all can look it up. There's back when she was pregnant with Frankie, she was 55, and her husband, I think, was 63 at the time. And they went on some reality show, and if you Google it out there, if you just put pregnant, these people, if you just put pregnant ... 55 and Kathleen, you'll come up with it. And there's a video out there. Apparently they went on this show when she was 55 and pregnant with Frankie. So, I don't know whether they think this is funny. I don't know whether they thought this was some sort of a, game or whatever. But, and then when the husband died, of course, you know the history because I went through it. So, they had no business having kids. And she had no business having an infant at 62 years old.
What was the motel they were at Treasure Island Motel?
Actually, it's the Residence Inn in Treasure Island.
Do you believe your child protective investigators could have done anything different to prevent this death?
No, and that's why I ran through it with you, because at that time, the only thing we had is that the Treasure Island Police Department did respond out there. They didn't see anything, and nothing that the officer responded saw that was warranting a call to the Child Protection Division or to the DCF hotline. It wasn't until the child arrived at the hospital that the hospital decided, because of the nature of the injury and the brain bleed, that they should call because it was really related to the kid being carried in a car seat that was not secure and fell out, and that in and of itself causes reasons for concern. So that was the nature of it, and like I said, is that our child protection investigator, it was an immediate response to the hospital. I believe she arrived about 5:30 in the morning, conducted a very thorough, very complete investigation, talked to the doctors, talked to Kathleen, viewed what she needed to view, and it simply appeared as the situation is she was in the middle of the night, she was responding because of a fire alarm. She forgot to buckle the kid in the seat, and Kathleen fell out. And the second one, which was a couple days later, was a report of inadequate supervision. And that report, even though the general allegation is what I told you, is that it lacked any specifics. Nonetheless, we went out and conducted, again, a thorough, complete investigation. And what we saw and what we were presented with didn't provide us with any evidence, any indication of anything like this. And if it had, of course, we would have acted on it. I'm very confident in this case that our child protection investigator and our child protection investigation division did everything right. In the past, I've been very straightforward with you when that hasn't happened. And if it was the case and there were any issues, I would tell you. But here we did it right, and everything was done properly. And there is no way that anybody in hindsight would look at this and say we should have done something differently, and we certainly couldn't have prevented what happened Monday. I was very aware in the last couple of days of that being a concern. It was a concern for me to make sure, so that I know, okay, that did we do everything we could have done and should have done? So that if we had done something, such as removing Kathleen or taking some action, that this event on Monday wouldn't have happened. And I can tell you that I'm 100% confident that there's nothing else we could have done or should have done, and that we couldn't have prevented this from happening with Frankie doing what he did.
Is he in school?
He is. He is in school. I had a conversation with Superintendent Grego this afternoon. I don't know what, I would refer you to Superintendent Grego and to the Pinellas County Schools. I understand that he does attend Lakewood Elementary, and I don't know what his status will be as far as they are concerned. That's not my decision. That's certainly a decision for the school board, but Superintendent Grego is aware of it and aware of the situation.
So would he be a kindergartner or a first grader?
I believe he was a kindergartner. He might have been going into first, but I believe he's a kindergartner.
But no red flags in school of him acting out?
There's nothing that I'm aware of. I can tell you that from my observations of Frankie and talking to others, Frankie is a very, very bright boy, very smart kid, mature above his age, and to some degree, and I just tell you, this is just my, from what I know from the last few days of dealing with this, seeing it, hearing it, and talking to our folks. I think, unfortunately, is Kathleen took this kid at 6 years old and made him a 30-year-old and tried to make him a surrogate father for the other kids. I think that she, the things that he said and his awareness level and how astute that he is was amazing, really. By talking to him or hearing him talk, you'd never think the kid was 6. But he's got a lot of issues and a lot of pent-up hostility and anger. To do what he did, I mean, he demonstrated it for us. And he showed us that he took the baby and he said he slammed the baby and he was slamming her and kept slamming her and he kept twisting her and he was flipping her back and forth and slamming her on the ground. And then he took her on the ceiling and he pushed her head up into the ceiling and was slamming it, and there's all blood up on the ceiling of the van. So he was very specific and very demonstrative in what he did. We had him show us with a doll, and it was very violent as he was slamming that doll, and it's terrible. Not really. He's 6. He did make a statement at one point through this, and there's a lot of things that have happened, a lot of statements were made. And at one point, he did make a statement, something to the effect of, sometimes people make really bad mistakes. I'd say, but again, I go back to me. The mistake is with the adult Kathleen Steele, not with a 6-year-old boy.
Can you give any indication of why he did this?
Well, the baby was acting up. The baby was crying, and he was trying to quiet the kid. Remember, they were left in this van for 30 minutes. Over 30 minutes. And he was trying to do, as he explained, although he did it in a violent way, some of the things he saw his mother do to try and calm the baby. And one of those was to hold the baby up in the air, but not slam the kid against the ceiling and then pummel. The kid's eyes were just bruised, big old gash on the nose. I mean, her face, and of course the pictures are confidential. I cannot share them with you, can't show them to you, but they're by law, they're confidential, but it's brutal. I mean, it is absolutely brutal. And the best way I can describe it to you is he pummeled her. And the skull was cracked. And I saw pictures of it from the autopsy. And I mean, just picture a skull that looks like cracks in the sidewalk. I mean, it is that obvious as far as the cracks are concerned.
Is there any way to know what point in that 30-minute period they were alone? Was it, the first 10 minutes? Was it
The whole 30 minutes.
the entire time?
The whole time, 38 minutes to be exact. But she left them in that van by themselves for 38 minutes.
Well, is there any, when he started pummeling her?
No. Because there's no way the kids would know that. Sometime during that, 38-minute period.
Can you explain why you release Frankie's name, child's name, or just in general, those things tend to be confidential, or why?
Well, the kid, really, I mean, technically he's committed a crime, so You know, and it's one of those that, you know, we're releasing the mother's name. I mean, people are going to put it together. It is what it is. You know, it's sad, it's tragic. I mean, and we've decided not to charge him. But, you know, this is, I mean, nonetheless, you got a 6-year-old that has killed a 13-day-old.
And you said imitating. I mean, he was imitating, I mean, no 6-year-old thinks this. He
No.
was imitating something he'd seen in one of these.
Well, he showed us what he did. I want to be clear, so let's be clear with that, is that we asked him, he explained it to us, and we asked him to demonstrate, and then he showed us. I took the baby and I slammed her like this, and I slammed her down, and he pushed her up into the ceiling. And when he was talking about when he pushed her up into the ceiling, he was holding her up like this, and then he said he was flipping her. So he was flipping her this way and flipping her that way, and then she'd fall. So it was just really, the way he was describing it is, he was tossing that baby around like a rag doll. Was what he was doing.
You know, you referred us to the superintendent, obviously we'll reach out to Johnson County and schools, but you talked a little bit, obviously, the school system talked to the classmates, families of this kid. I would imagine there's going to be some concern at that school now.
Yeah, and I really don't know the answer to that. You know, again, I talked to Superintendent Grego very briefly this afternoon, and that's something you really need to talk to him about, and I just can't answer those questions for you because I don't know.
Did Kathleen show any anger towards what her son had done when you interviewed her?
No, she wouldn't admit that he did it. In fact, she was very, I would describe it as aloof about it. So I'll give you an example, is that at the house, when EMS was there and had been called, and EMS was trying to revive the kid, which again, futile because the kid had been dead for a while, is that deputies are there, paramedics are there working on 13-day-old baby who's obviously dead, is that she turns around and goes to the kitchen and starts putting groceries away. You know, well, who does that when you got a 13-year-old that's sitting, the way this kid looked, there is no mistaking the condition that kid was in when you see those photos. She was very aloof.
She seemed sad that her child had died.
For the first, when she was here on Monday night, she was being interviewed, and for 1 hour into the interview, she never even asked what the kid's status was. Never even expressed any interest or any concern. Yeah. Never asked, even when she was told, I guess I got to plan a funeral. I guess no. It was very aloof, the way I would describe it.
Sheriff said that evidently there was some, I guess, the husband died of cancer, and the biological case before this?
Now, I don't know, what I understand is, and I don't know if it's from a previous marriage or whatever, the husband, because there was this discussion about this, the husband apparently has a 35-year-old child. Now, I don't know whether that's from Kathleen. I don't think it is. But the only child that they had together was Frankie, the 6-year-old. And he was born just before the husband passed away. And the husband passed away in 2011. Frankie is now 6, so he would have been born just before that. So the only biological children that they have, they are still biological, would be Frankie, who was conceived and born before the husband died, and then Philip, and then baby Kathleen, who were conceived and born after the husband died.
Will there be a funeral? You guys
I don't know. There's other family, there's family involved, and we don't know the answer to all that. You know, again, this is all fresh and still unfolding. She was just arrested this afternoon, so I'm not sure what other family members and will decide to do and how they'll take care of those arrangements. Philip and Kathleen from artificial insemination, yeah.
Would you always put the foster care together?
No, they're separated, and they're in what we call therapeutic foster care, where the foster caregivers are specially trained to deal with this. And again, the Department of Children and Families is acutely aware of this situation and very aware of the needs. There'll be some special assessments going on very soon and making sure that this is dealt with the sensitivity that it needs to be dealt with, given the extreme situation and the very uniqueness of it. So they are by themselves in foster care, and again, it's what they call a therapeutic foster care environment, to make sure that the people who are dealing with Frankie and with Philip are qualified to do that.
The husband's name was?
Philip also. So you got Kathleen Steele and baby Kathleen Steele, and you got Philip Steele and baby Philip Steele.
Is that Philip Marshall?
I don't know.
Will you be releasing the surveillance video?
No, not really. We won't be releasing anything at this point. In the surveillance video shows her inside the store is pretty much what it is. You know, we won't be releasing any video at this point. Of course, you know, like I said, all the photographs are confidential, so we can't, and believe me, you wouldn't want to see them anyway.
Can you tell us which store it was?
Yeah, it's called the CPR cell phone repair store. I believe I gave you the address. I'll give it to you again. It's 1472 66th Street North in St. Petersburg.
And, so I gave it, but the home address?
Yeah, the home address is 356 Bath Club Boulevard North, North Reddington Beach.
And the make and model of the car they were in?
Yeah, we can get that for you. I don't know off the top of my head. It was a rental car from Enterprise, and I told you that after she left the CPR cell phone store, she stopped at another business before she went home. Where they stopped was, and this tells you how astute Frankie is that Frankie told her apparently is that she had this rental car for 30 days through his Enterprise, and they stopped at Enterprise. Frankie told her it's the end of the month, you got to stop and get your car renewed. So I mean, I tell you, this kid is, it's anyway. So that's where they went from CPR to Enterprise and Enterprise to the house. So the car that they were in was a rental.
She stopped to renew her rental car rather than take the baby to the hospital.
Yeah, well, at that point, we don't know. Frankie had told her and said, it's serious as far as Kathleen was concerned, and she just blew it off and said, we'll deal with it when we get home. And then she stopped at Enterprise, and she was at Enterprise for like another half hour. So that's why you had such a real time gap between the CPR cell phone store incident in the parking lot and by the time they got home, because she left the cell phone store, she left her debit card there, she had to come back, and then she went to the Enterprise store, and then they went home. So it was at Enterprise Car Rental, and that's where she stopped after the cell phone store before she went to the house. All right, anybody else got anything? Okay, thanks.